smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
We have a conflict in the breast of policing in Chattanooga that you can see hints of in the page one story in the Chattanooga Times Press today, a story by Emmett Gienap, in which the report gives details and quotes from high officers of Mayor Andy Burke's administration sitting around the conference room table and discussing policing and improvements in policing under new Chief David Roddy, who is pictured numerous times there with his phalanx of officers, all in blue, all wearing their military regalia. At the end, a female officer and also Chief McPherson there next to Chief David Roddy, a very fine token of Roddy's generous spirit for his former rival, if you will, for that position. He was selected among three candidates for that office by Mayor Burke. The other leading candidate was Chief McPherson. Now, the question about this conflict is as follows. It touches on the relation, the need for, well, let's see, how do I put it? The conflict between community policing as a policy of the department, inspired and encouraged by former Chief Fred Fletcher, and the rule of the courts about arrests and about Miranda. The Miranda rule, Arizona versus Miranda in the 1960s required the reading of rights to people who are under arrest, right? Who are people who are citizens, and now they are defendants, they are arrestees. The ruling requires that the party under arrest be notified of his rights, right? The presumption is that the party doesn't know his rights, and so he's going to be told what they are by the officer who has arrested him. And that is the first thing that happens when you're arrested, is that you are read your rights under the Miranda opinion. Now, the opinion I'll mention later why that opinion came about. But effectively, what it requires is that you, my listener, under arrest by a Chattanooga police officer, that you be told that anything you say can and will be used against you in court. Anything you give the officer by way of consent, anything you consent to give him, a document or papers or anything at all, will be used against you in court. You have a right to remain silent. And here I am. I'm reading this in blue, marked by blue, on page 6 of a 13-page policy rule on arrest procedure, OPS 42, from the Chattanooga Police Department policy manual. That's on page 6. Miranda finally makes its appearance. You have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court. You have the right to talk to a lawyer for advice before we ask you any questions, and to have him with you during questioning. If you cannot, that's point 3. Point 4, if you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you before any questioning, if you wish. And then the 5th point, if you decide to answer questions now without a lawyer present, you will still have the right to stop answering questions at any time. In other words, you can stop answering questions when you want to. You also have the right to stop answering questions at any time until you talk to a lawyer. So you can say what you want, but you're being notified under the Miranda warning that you're under arrest, and that anything you say or give by way of information about yourself is going to probably incriminate you, or might incriminate you, or you should view such statement or such admission or confession as incriminating against you. So if you're not sure, if you're not sure what your standing is at that moment, the best thing to do is to say absolutely nothing. The problem, though, for policing and the police state and the military and the judicial industrial complex is this: if people are Mirandized, then that slows down the process. The flow of defendants, the flow of people into the system will be cut back markedly if people are Mirandized. Police department in Chattanooga does not Mirandize people regularly. Neither does the Tennessee Highway Patrol Mirandize people in traffic stops. The most high-profile arrest that we have before us in the past few months is that of Demetrius Coonrod, the city councilwoman, her car, driven by a man named Anthony Gladden, who works at Erlanger Hospital. He was behind the wheel, ostensibly as the driver. Her car was stopped. He was questioned by Officer Tiffany Lentz. Thanks to an open records request that got that video out in public from the Chattanooga Times Free Press. There is no reading of Miranda rights. Okay, you're not Mirandized, though you are under arrest. This gets complicated. Okay, this gets complicated. How do you know you're under arrest? Well, according to at least three rulings cited in the Tennessee jurisprudence, which is the legal encyclopedia for Tennessee law. At the very beginning, the very first page in the footnotes, you have the authorities for the statement that arrest equals seizure equals stop. So when the blue lights go on, you are under arrest. You're under arrest. And what slows everything down and makes things much more complicated is the Miranda rule that the department requires of every officer. Now we have a kind of a conflict in the policy rules of Chief David Roddy, the rules put there by his former superior, Fred Fletcher. The policy is not really in conflict, but it looks like one. Okay, it looks like there's an out in traffic, and it's this in the traffic policy, which is 3 pages. There is no Miranda requirement, implying here's I'm holding it up for the viewer on Facebook. But we are live on Facebook here. David Tulis, 92.7 FM and 95.3 HD4. Right, that's a high definition digital radio signal. I'm holding up for my YouTube viewer and my Facebook viewer a printout of this 3-page policy. Motor vehicle stops. Okay, motor vehicle stops are in commerce, by the way. But there's nothing in this policy that says that the people being stopped are under arrest. It's implied, but there's no. Well, let me back up from that. I don't think that's quite true. I think what I should have said is that these are arrests, but Miranda is not required. That's all I want to say about this. These are commercial stops. And the policy talks about emergency lights being used for investigatory stops. Officers shall perform vehicle stops only when they have a legal and articulable reasons to do so. In other words, you're free from being stopped unless there's a legal or articulable reason to do so. And there's a breakdown of these stops. One is high-risk vehicle stops. One is low-risk vehicle stops. If it's a high-risk vehicle stop, you know that's how they view you because they're coming at you from the right side. And if it's a routine, low risk stop, he approaches the driver or passenger side should be observed. Well, I'm not sure about the side of the approach, but there are two. The policy breaks down the two types of stops, and then there's the miscellaneous stop. But there's no Miranda required there. However, in the 13-page policy rule for arrest, in general, arrest procedures, I'll hold that up here too now for you if you want to see what it looks like. Again, printed out from the Chattanooga Police Department policy book. It's a policy manual, OPS 42, arrest procedures. Miranda is given on page 6, and I read you what those warnings are. Now the question is, the conflict in the department is this. In a nutshell, you have the state, right? This religious corporation that's behind state government. It operates for its own under its own sovereignty, its own existential claim as against the people. And I want you just to take my word for it. That is how it operates. It is an existential claim to every part of human life and human activity. It hasn't succeeded in penetrating every venue yet, but it would if it could. Though there is of course drag and friction that prevents that from ultimately happening. And I'd say because there's a God, right? Because there's a God that prevents it from reaching the totality of its pretended premise of sovereignty. And that, where was I going with that? Well, this is David Tulis, and you are here, by the way, at Nooga Radio. Thanks for giving me just a minute of your time. The process of arrest is to be made simple and quick. And there is, I was just wandering through the code a couple of days ago, and I found that I had read the chapter in Tennessee Code Annotated 7, actions in lieu of arrest. There too, there's a statute that enables the police state, thanks to the General Assembly, to operate smoothly and easily without arrest, without the need to have every person who's arrested to be booked, right? To be taken to the magistrate where he has to go first, and to be booked and fingerprinted and photo ID'd, etc. To have, to be put into the system, right? To be inducted, to be enrolled, if you will, in the judicial industrial complex that has ruined thousands and thousands of lives in Hamilton County for decades. Okay, this system has ruined thousands of lives, many lives belonging to poor people, black people, common people, who can't afford an attorney and who get dragged into the system and then sit in jail because they can't post bond or bail, make the bail. Once they get arrested, bail is supposed to be issued. They can't even afford the bail. They can't pay the bail bondsman $500 on the $5,000 bail, right? And so there they sit for weeks in jail because they're too poor to make the bail. That's a separate racket. We'll cover that story another time. That's a racket in itself, by the way. A racket in Hamilton County, the bail bond racket. People can't pay their way out. And so there's a provision, a statutory provision that allows actions in lieu of arrest, and that would be the citation system. Okay, that's in short what it allows for. That you don't have to be arrested if you sign the citation. You agree to avoid a warrant being sought for you by agreeing equitably under the commercial provisions, I suppose, of Title 55, to be appearing in court on the date assigned by the officer, and you don't have to be arrested. What that does is that civilizes a brutal process of arrest, right? That civilizes and softens the whole activity of the state against the people. The state against the people who are, tripping up on their paperwork, right? They don't have they have a tag light out. They have a blinker light that they didn't use on a left-hand turn. They have an expired tag. They have a front light out, right? They failed to indicate a right turn into the Walmart shopping center on Highway 153, and so they are arrested. They crossed the line, right? You're not making a turn, but you crossed the line, and then you went back into the line. We think that's probable cause to stop you. So people are brought into the system by citation, and they're not arrested. But the problem, let me get all right. You see the problem here is if you don't have to be arrested, you have a lot more people being processed, right? You can process a lot of people if you don't have to arrest and book everybody and fingerprint everybody, right? Which is what should happen. That's what should happen if you're arrested. But the government allows the state to operate shortcutting the arrest process, and that is through the citation process from the Chattanooga Police Department and the other corporate police departments process these people into city court, or if it's in the county, by sheriff's deputy into sessions court. And because you don't have
clearly. So the irony of that, the hypocrisy of Jennifer Palmieri saying on MSNBC that it's appalling that the president shows he's unable to hold the election. That's rich. Maybe she hasn't followed Mrs. Clinton's comments on the book tour, or seen her appearances, or heard her interviews where she said she's absolutely fine with contesting the election outcomes. So let's just put that aside for a moment. Advocating violence against women? Nah, I think that's a stretch as well. But ultimately, it's not a great idea, it seems to me, for a sitting president, the commander-in-chief, who won the election, to have to retweet something that shows a woman who we know has been in and out of bad health. Who will ever forget her popping out of her shoe and collapsing in lower Manhattan on a mild, balmy day in New York City, claiming that it was heat stroke or whatever. And turned out she was suffering from pneumonia and she was pretty sick. This is not a 69, 70-year-old woman, whatever she was when she fell, falling to the ground by tripping over some steps. Listen, I'm 57. It wouldn't be a pretty picture for me to do it. It's not a great look for the president to do it. Not a big deal. It's almost irrelevant. It's part of Trump's personality. It's what the president does. I think it does confirm he's got that dark, funny sense of humor, which frankly I do too. just that I'm not the president. He won. She's going to lash out at him. I would have liked to have seen him avoid even creating this controversy. But let's see what you think. 800-655-Mike. A lot of comments about it. Amy writes, all week, Hillary was breaking his chops on the stupid book tour, and one gif from the president, the world falls apart. It's a good point.